I'm not complaining because these are fond memories, but it was a challenge. It was a sacrifice, and it was an investment.
Hi, my name's Devon. Today I own several multi-million-dollar companies. We started with $5,000 in a credit card. I don't know the easy way. I only know the hard way.
Welcome to the Whiteboard Entrepreneur Podcast, where I give straightforward advice to fuel the entrepreneur in all of us. I'm Devon Dickinson. Today I want to talk to you about that first 2 years of business. So I got a question the other day from a friend of mine who I know very, very well. And he's like, Devon, he goes, you never really told me about what it was like when you very, very first started. He goes, I've known you. He goes, because he's only known me for like maybe the last 10 years. And for those of you who don't know, I started my companies, probably about 21 years ago. So he's only known me, since things have been, very good and very blessed and exciting. Not that they haven't always been, but, he said, hey, can you tell me the stories about like the first 2 years? What was that really like? And I kind of had to reflect, and it almost hit like going a time machine and really go back and think about that. And I think it's important that I tell you all this story too, because, a lot of times in this podcast, we fast forward to what it's like to run a business today, what it's like to deal with employees today. And oftentimes, especially for entrepreneurs, you need to know what it's like in that beginning, what it's like in the grind. And so I'm going to share with you what some of my experiences were during that first 2 years, and just to help inspire you in a lot of ways, to let you know that, listen, we all start like at the bottom, like we start grinding and inspire you all, but at the same time, give you an understanding of like what it's going to take, right? Because there's a lot of inspiration here, but like there's a lot of heartache and there's a lot of stuff that you need to prepare yourself for if you're going to go on this journey. And so when you watch TikTok and you watch Instagram and you watch all these platforms, you just hear about the super exciting stuff. You always, you see the person in front of the jet, but you don't really know what it took to get there. And so I want to share that with you. It's transparent. I want to be, kind of take a trip down memory lane and just tell you what it's like. So, all funniness aside, all joking aside here, I am telling you 100% the truth, and I'm going to start here. What was it like 21 years ago? Well, let's start with this. If you're just listening right now and you're not seeing me on video, I'm pointing at my head. 21 years ago, I had hair. And I mean, I had thick hair. I mean, I had like the type of hair that like you could pick somebody up, like if they were like one of those pencils, the little, you do this and the hair would puff up. I had thick hair. And when I started the company, it was so incredibly stressful that I lost my hair in clumps. About 2 years into starting my company, I ended up shaving my head, and I've never had hair since then. So literally it took an incredible stress and toll on the body. And it wasn't just my hair. Like I remember there was a good friend of ours that I used to see, like we'd probably see him, 2 times a week at least, maybe even more. They were friends that we lived in the same neighborhood. We were super tight. We were always going out to dinner with them. And we were very close to this family. Well, when I started the company, I didn't see them very much, right? Because I was doing a lot of work out of town. And so I would only see her maybe every 5 or 6 weeks. And she kept saying, I'll never forget, she was like, Devon, are you taking care of yourself? Are you okay? You don't look good. And I'm like, what do you mean I don't look good? I'm like, I'm working hard. Yeah, but I'm fine. I'm good. I'm going. I'm taking on the world, let's go. And she's like, no, you need to take care of yourself. And now I look back on those times and I think about my hair, and she was right. Like it took a toll on my body. Right. And so does it do that to everybody? I'm not saying it does. I'm saying for me, it took a toll on my body. A lot of people I know put on a ton of weight, and really because they stopped exercising, they stopped doing everything. But for me, literally, it made my hair fall out. I got bags under my eyes. it aged me. It really did age me, because I also was like one of those kids that was like, could get, when I was younger, I'd get rated to go, or, I'd be 21 years old and get carded at a rated R movie. You know what I mean? Like, I had a very young face, and it aged me over those first couple years. And it was a lot. And so there was also a real financial burden. And the reason I'm going to say this is because people go into this thinking, oh, well, I'm going to start my company, so I'm going to have more. Our family, me and my wife at the time, and our baby, we had less when I started my company, because I had a full-time job. I had a good paying job. And also my wife had a good paying job. And so we were doing well, doing well enough. And when I quit my job, I didn't replace my income. That went completely and entirely away. And when I started this company, it went over almost exactly, maybe slightly over 2 years without a single paycheck that I took for myself. And so we went from double income, with my income being larger than hers, down to just her income, period. And that was a big impact on our company. And I'm going to make it even a little bit worse, right? Because guess what? When the company couldn't pay all the bills that it had, and remember, I hadn't made a paycheck, right? But when the company couldn't pay all the bills I had, Cindy and my wife and I had to reach into our savings from basically what she was making and take our money out of our personal savings to help float the company during that time. And this is not uncommon, right? I'm not an exception to the rule. I'm more of the rule. This is what it's like starting a business. And this was like a 2-year plus period of time. And so there was extreme financial pressure on myself and my wife. And we had a baby. Super smart, started the company 3 months after the baby was born, right? And you want to talk about pressure, right? Like, you're talking about pressure, that I felt as a father, as a husband, to be able to provide for my family, and the whole time not bringing home a paycheck, and sometimes going to my wife and saying, hey, we need to take money out of our savings to help float the company. And so that was a stress. Okay. For me also, there was a huge time investment. And you'd say, well, yeah, I work hard already. Like, I work super hard during the day. Well, great. Listen, I worked hard during the day, but when let's say you work for someone, you do 9 to 5 and you work your butt off, right? Well, at 5 o'clock, you go home and you don't have to think about work. I'm not saying you don't, but you don't have to think about work, and you don't have other responsibilities that you take with you. Well, I would work from 4 a.m. Actually, it was like, I would get to the office around 4:45. So I'd leave the house at 4. I get to the office at 4:45, and then I wouldn't leave until typically after 6, probably like 6:30. So that was, 13, 14-hour days. And then I would go home and I would eat. And then after I ate, I would work on the business, and I would work on everything that I couldn't do and shouldn't do during the daylight hours. Because during the daylight hours, I had to make hay, right? Like, that was the time to talk to customers. That was the time to do sales. That was the time to do the customer service. During business hours was the only time that I could deal with customers, right? So after business hours, after I worked until 6:30, go home and I would eat. I would do all of the other stuff. I would do the product development. I would do the R&D. I would pay the bills. I would do the financials, all the payroll stuff, all of that other stuff, documentation, all the other stuff. I would do that late into the night. And this was, again, the first couple of years, because I couldn't afford to pay people to do other stuff. On the weekends, I remember my wife and she would help me stuff envelopes and, mail out product and stuff. So on Sunday afternoons, we were doing that. Saturday was the only day that we had that we didn't do anything. And so there was a huge time constraint placed on me, and time investment that I put into the company the first several years. Socially, I didn't have a social life. I didn't. I just didn't. For over 2 years, aside from my wife and a couple friends that I would see here and there, I had no social life. When I did have like Saturdays evenings and Friday evenings, it would just be me and my wife. I was exhausted. And thankfully she was happy to do whatever, I wanted to do. And I knew I needed the rest, but like I didn't have a social life. I don't think we took much of a vacation, if any, during that time. We'd take, maybe a few 3-day weekends here and there just to reset. But I remember, and this is a funny story now. Some women are probably going to hate me when I tell this, and they probably should, but it was so bad. My time was so constrained that when we were going to have our second and third child, was it kind of in the middle of this like stress of like working super hard and trying to make the company work. And I remember telling the doctor, like, cause the doctor was like, well, we think we're going to be able to have, the baby here or there. And my wife had a C-section. I said, well, she had a C-section. Let's schedule this thing right now because I can fit this into my calendar on Friday afternoon. And if we do this Friday afternoon, I can be here Friday morning. I can be back to work on Monday. So come on, doc, let's make this work. Right. And again, terrible story. I'm not saying this is how you do it. I'm just saying this is what it was like for the first couple of years of starting our company. And so there was this stress and this things that other people don't have to deal with. Was it worth it? Absolutely. Would I do it again? I don't know. I'm 52 years old. I don't think I have the energy to do it again, really. And I'm not telling you if you're in your 50s, you can't go and start and pursue your dreams. And probably if you're in your 50s, you're probably in a different place financially and maturity than I was, when I started my company. But these are the things that you have to think about. And this is what you have to understand. So I'm going to tell you there were other sacrifices we made. So when I would travel, I would do one of two things. I would either sleep in my car, because I would just save, instead of paying for a hotel room, I'm like, I'm only going to sleep 5 hours anyway. So I just pull over to rest stop and sleep in the car instead of getting a hotel. Or B, I would literally sleep in $40, $45 a night hotels. Right. And I mean, I did this all the time. I'm probably bed bug bites and you name it. Right. But it was like, I'm not going to spend my money on a nice hotel for me when I know that we're barely breaking even with the company. So like, this was just a sacrifice that I was willing to make. And so sometimes when I would fly, because I didn't have a manager, I knew that if I needed to travel for work, I would manage the office during the day. I would set it so I'd have a red eye so I could travel at night so I did not miss the business day. Plus, I looked at it as the advantage of I didn't have to pay for a hotel because I would just sleep on the airplane. So this was the mindset that I had, and this was what I went into, and it was the grind that I went into. And I think about this, and right now it sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm not complaining because these are fond memories. But it was a challenge. It was a sacrifice, and it was an investment. And I want people to know that going into it. And I think if you know that going into it, and I did, because I had good mentors, right? Like the mentors that I had in my life told me this is what I was going to do. Like this is what it was going to take. Am I man enough to do it? Kind of that like, Marine Corps mentality. You're like, are you man enough to be in the Marines, right? And so the people, they go and sign up because they want that challenge. Well, I knew when I was going into it, I knew when I was going into business, that challenge that I was going to take, because those mentors beat it into my head. So I looked at it as like, this is going to be awesome. It's going to be hard. It's going to be a grind, but someday I'm going to have a great story to tell. And here I am today telling you this great story, not to discourage you, but to set your expectations correctly so you can get that mindset so that you can tackle those first 2 or 3 years and you can enjoy that, embrace it, but know what you're getting into. Now, here's the thing. What happened after 2 years? Well, I'm going to tell you, right after 2 years, I started taking a paycheck. All of a sudden, I was so grateful for that paycheck. And my wife and I also knew what it was like to live without, right? So we didn't start changing, how we spent overnight or anything like that. We remained very conservative, and we started growing the company. The fourth year, I made more money profit the fourth year of owning my company than I had made all of the other time working all together. And then the fifth year, I made more money than all the other time working together, plus all the money in my fifth year. And then from there, it started to grow and grow and grow. And I'm not going to tell you that everything changed overnight, because remember, we're at like 5 years now, right? But going into and understanding the work, the effort, and everything that it took, I had the right mindset. I knew that I could do it, and I was willing to make that sacrifice and investment. And I want you to know what you're getting into. Listen, you can be successful, you can grow, but make sure that you have the right expectations, especially those first 2 years. I'm Devon, and this is the Whiteboard Entrepreneur Podcast, and I know this is going to help you.